watching the meeting again. They can see us.
Okay, sorry, guys.
Goodbye, Shannon.
Okay. Bye, Lee.
Am I back here? Sorry, guys. This is, I hate technology. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you, but we don't see the slide.
Okay, give it a second here. I'm trying to,
You may have to share it again.
all right. I wonder if you, okay, it's a little sluggish here. You see the corgi in me?
Yeah, that we see.
Well, let's see if I can't get rid of that. How's that? Yeah, let's go back to Thomas Jefferson there. Sorry, guys, it gave me no warning. So I'm going to play from the current slide. And then I'm going to go back over here to, I'm just going to share that screen.
Is that George or Ringo?
That's Ringo.
She didn't answer.
What's that? I'm sorry.
No, we were talking.
Oh, so I just want to make sure I didn't lose you guys. So bear with me just a quick second as I try to, I'm going to share screen now. Okay, and boom, and then we go like this. And we're back. Okay.
Hey, yay.
Yay, indeed. God bless your heads, guys. Okay. I'm going to try and move along here now. And again, I apologize.
See you, Father Patrick.
Can you see me or you don't? Do you see the,
We
No.
see Jefferson and Will.
Okay, let me go to standard.
okay, Jefferson and the will. Okay. We can interpret the vision of Jefferson in light of the ancient ideal of the voluntary life. This is, we use the word liturgy. That's an interesting phrase. When you hear me use liturgy, you think I'm talking about worship. Liturgy was a Greek word, liturgia, which meant the work for the people. So if you built a bridge, if you will, for someone, then you were doing a liturgy. If you had a piece of property and there was a river and you built a bridge across it so that people could cut across your land and use that bridge, you were doing something that was considered to be a voluntary act, a liturgia. This is what he means by a voluntary life. And part of what he's saying here is that for Jefferson, the aim of self-government is not the satisfaction of just our individual desires, but the incarnation of our free will to do things for others. To that end, he says, my anxiety on this subject will never carry me beyond the use of fair and honorable means of truth and reason, nor have they ever lessened my esteem for the moral worth, nor alienated my affections from a single friend who did not themselves first wish to withdraw himself from me. He says here, in anything I do, I'm not going to let go of you. We're going to stay together, and nothing I do is going to be separated from you. When he made a university, it was not a money-making venture, which we think of as the University of Virginia. His desire to make a university was to make something of a liturgia, of a public good, of a public expression of his will. And at the same time, it was a place where differences of ideas could be fostered and allowed. Now he has this thing, he's not naive though. He says we believed, writes Jefferson, that man was a rational animal endowed by nature with rights and with an innate sense of justice, and that he could be restrained from wrong and protected by right, by moderate powers confided to persons of his own choice and held to their duties by dependence on their own will. Saying again, for Jefferson, man is inherently endowed with conscience as a part of his nature, just as surely he was endowed with the capacity to see, hear, and touch. So there's a good angel on one shoulder, even though there's going to be that expected bad angel on the other. Now, Madison raised a lot of issues here. He says there are two methods of curing the mischief of factions. Everybody's worried about parties at this point. The one by removing its causes, the other by controlling its effects. If I could raise any question for us to discuss today, it would be, how are we handling factions in our own time? Because to me, this is one of the most important questions, because this is what we are. We're a jumble of factions and parties. And there are two methods of curing the mischief of factions. The one by removing its causes and the other by controlling it. Sorry, same thing I just said, excuse me. Now, this picture is not supposed to be an anti-Nancy Pelosi thing, okay? What I want you to see in here is something rather poignant. It is the idea of factions. On the one side is Nancy tearing up a speech. On the other side is Donald not really caring what she's doing behind him. We have embodied here two separate factions. And he says, if a faction consists of less than a majority, this is Hamilton, pardon me, not Hamilton, Madison. Less than a majority, relief is supplied by the Republican principle. Us being together will keep the minority from being abused, which enables the majority to defeat the sinister views by regular vote. It may clog the administration, it may convulse the society, but it will be unable to execute and mask its violence under the form of the Constitution. This sort of thing that we see here is something that we have to be able to regain, the ability to trust each other, even when we have a slim majority commanding the scene. They can't get away with it if we stay together. So this idea of Jefferson's communal self, this idea of what it means to owe other people his best efforts, this powerful sense of human imperfection, which existed side by side with his vision of human possibilities, demanded more of him. As a great man could be, man as he is had to be restrained from his overwhelming tendencies towards oppression, injustice, greed, and tyranny. And there had to be room, free and clear, for human beings to exercise their freedom to think. And this meant to think together in community, to exchange with each other in the realm of ideas and perceptions. Jefferson used to argue, using the words of Locke, the idea of the free market of ideas. For him, this was a vital reality that we as a people maintained a free exchange, like a marketplace of just our ideas and notions. Now, this scene, of course, would look a lot better, I think, on a big. But there's the fasces on either side of the well of the Senate. There had to be a space for human beings to become improved and perfected by the process of free inquiry and by the natural obligations of living on earth and carrying out their nature and human responsibilities. Would that we could recapture that. Three things here that Jefferson felt all of us needed to have in develop: the mind, feelings, emotions, and our physical selves. And in all of these things, he felt that these were indispensable together. He described it as if as the Trinity was necessary to make the one Godhead. And just to close in on our vertical democracy, which is the greatness of the mythical Jefferson. In order to reestablish the idea of democracy, there needs to be a sense that the whole is more than the sum of the parts, that the whole exists as a higher level than the parts. The idea of the democratic communal self is as strong an American ideal as that of individualism. And just to sneak in another view of the fasces, they're actually what Abraham Lincoln sits on in the Lincoln Memorial. If you look there, you can see them.
The Roman.
So it's a prevailing symbol that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Now, this last bit is very quick, and it's something that's personal to me, very, very dear. This little moment that he takes to look at the face of Lincoln, because it's the question that he raised earlier in the book when we talked last week, the idea between individualism and individuality. Individualism was, it's mine, I'm going to do what I want, stay out of my affairs. The individual is someone that can be something in himself and bring it to the collective good. And he talks about the face of Lincoln. When he looks at this face of Lincoln, he acknowledges as a child, he's like, none of us understood what it was about Lincoln that was or could be great. He's an ugly guy with a bad haircut. Nothing about him, when you look at him, demands you to imagine greatness. He doesn't look like Washington. He looks like a guy that used to split rails. He looks like an overly tall man whose hair will not obey and whose beard is scruffy, thin, lanky fellow. The ideal of individuality as a concept, as a word, just grazed the surface of it, of what his greatness was. and then slid off into other things. He says that I am looking at the root meaning of the idea of individuality that lies at the heart of the American experiment. The things he's talked about already, this idea that individuality is what we can develop in our freedom in order to give it back to the whole. He says, I sense that a key to this ideal is in the face of Lincoln. And this is a little lengthy passage, but so important. You cannot pick Lincoln out with any special characteristic. He does not seem to belong in a list at all. He seems to stand unique and singular and complete in himself. It is as if he has contained a world within himself. And that is the thing which marks the singular stature and nature of this great man. And we would fain believe typical American. Because when you try to describe the character of Lincoln, you seem to be trying to describe a great process of nature. Lincoln seemed to have been a great human use and not of a particular limited human use. There was no point at which life touched him that he did not speak back to it instantly its meaning. And being a big fan of his, I concur. It has been some time since our culture has spoken of the ideal character in this sense. Is that force of human presence which lies in the root of all virtue. The idea of character has been dissolved into the modern psychological idea of personality, where all functions and manifestations are either socially conditioned or biologically inherited, and where there is no room for consciousness. And so what he says here is, and now, unexpectedly, a connection emerges to another of the most profound elements of ancient vision of man, the idea of impersonal, the idea of an impersonal love. This impersonal love that says that you're an ideal represented in the world in the word impartiality, or the often misunderstood Oriental concept of non-attachment, an idea which we shall try to uncover in the American love of justice. And this is, the idea of the blind justice. But I would also link this to the idea of agape that I discussed earlier, this uninterested love that loves not asking what's in it for me. He, Lincoln, never seemed to allow a matter to grip him personally. He seemed so directly in contact with it that he could define things other men could not define, and yet he was detached. He did not look upon it as if he were part of it, and he was constantly salting all delightful things, he said, with the salt of wit and humor. I would not trust a saturnine man, but I would trust a wit, because a wit is a man who can detach himself and not get so buried in the matter he is dealing with as to lose that sure and free movement which a man can only have when he is detached. What a wonderful notion, this idea that we can love and operate unconditionally. He says here in Lincoln's utter lack of personal malice, and I'm reminded during the Civil War years in his second inaugural address, with malice towards none, he said. His humane detachment, his tragic sense of life had no parallel in political history. Lincoln was moved by the wounded and the dying men, moved as no one in a place of power can afford to be. This is true. He used to write all these letters to people who were wounded or killed in battle. He used to pardon time and again people that were caught for desertion because you just couldn't bear to be the cause. You could feel all the human suffering and tragedy. For him, it was impossible to drift into the habitual callousness of the sort of officialdom that sees men only as pawns to be shifted here and there and expended at the will of others. It was a symbolic thing that his office was so constantly open that he made himself more accessible than any other chief executive in our history. It is possible to recall anyone else in modern history who could exercise so much power and yet feel so slightly the private corruptions that goes with it. Here, perhaps, is the best measure of Lincoln's personal eminence in the human calendar, that he was chastened and not intoxicated by power. And that's kind of the closure of that particular little meditation he made. So, my friends, that's the section that we were going to do tonight. And I know I'd end up doing again all the talking, but I get so excited, and I know it's so hard to read that much in a given week with me. And I wanted to kind of go over the salient points, but at the same time, I'm a nut for Needleman, and they threw in Lincoln, who's my other big, huge fan, or my big, huge hero. So we had to play in there a little bit. Any thoughts about tonight, or any feedback, or where have I left you at this point?
How much will you be covering next week? Just so that we can read ahead.
Oh, I'm just teasing you, Georgette. You're one of my easier targets. You're the other one, so don't laugh too loud, David. Cocky.
How very kind of you to single me out.
No, I got him too. I got David. We're going to be covering the crimes of America. So that is pages 189 to 263.
Say again?
We're going to look at the essentially the relationship of America with the American Indians and slavery.
What were the pages?
Oh goodness, you made
It's
me.
part 3 of the book.
Part 3 of the
Crimes
book.
America.
Okay,
Part
part
3.
three.
And I think it's a useful thing, because what we've done so far is we've now lionized some of our great American heroes and lionized the ideals of America. I think it's important for us now to take this direction and say, as Needleman does, so what happens when we really do some things fundamentally wrong? And that'll be pick up next week. I hope today was worth your time, and I hope you'll be able to join us again.
Us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Father.
And I still have copies of the book here at the parish, at the church. If you'd like to come by and get one, or I can put one out for you or something like that, let me know, okay?
Okay.
Well, thank you all, and I send you all off now with God's blessings, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Bye-bye,
you.
guys. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.